Quality Cedar Company is the leading producer of affordable seeding equipment for the small to medium-sized agricultural operation. Hand-built in the USA, our company is located in the heart of some of the richest farmland in North Carolina. Our quality cedars are unsurpassed for value and ease of operation. Contact us today to see how our cedars can make you more productive.
Well, we start seeding in our greenhouse March 9th or so. We start our onions and leeks. And for our operation, the bulk of the seeding is in the beginning of the season. So March, April, May. We usually seed in our distribution barn just because it's a convenient place to seed. I mean, we do a lot of transplanting, and that's a lot of your farm. So if you don't have good transplants, it's just it's an area that you can have tons of control, but there's also potential for tons of catastrophe if you have bad transplants. So we make our own potting mix, and I guess that's just because we like to have a lot of control over what goes into the potting mix, the highest quality product we can get. We make 1 part compost, 1 part peat, and then 1 part perlite, 1 part vermiculite. So that's like the bulk of it. And then rock phosphate, green sand, blood meal, high-cal lime. My first internship was really greenhouse-based because it was in Alaska, so they had to do almost everything in the greenhouse. And they had a vacuum seeder, and for some reason that was my job. And so I would spend the entire day every Monday just vacuum seeding. So I guess I got really good at it. If you have all your flats filled and your tags already made, brassicas you can do 120 an hour. I mean, so it's really fast. Whereas if you did those by hand, I don't even know how long it would take to do 150 brassica flats by hand. A lot of time. Anything that would be in a plug flat, like individual cell flat, we use the vacuum seeder to seed. It's this plexiglass box. It hooks to a vacuum, just a little vacuum cleaner. Then on top of this plexiglass box, there are plates, metal seed plates that screw on. And we have 3 different plates. When you're deciding what vacuum seeder plates to buy, you just need to know which size seeds you plant in which size flats. We grow a lot of things in 128 flats. That is, it has 128 holes drilled into the steel plate. And we have 2 different 128 plates. One is with really small hole size, so that would be for like lettuce and celeriac, small seeded things. And then we have another one that is for bigger stuff, and it actually has a countersunk divot over each hole. So with that, we do pretty much brassicas. I have all my tags already written because we put a tag in each flat of variety and date. I've already filled all the flats I'm gonna need. And then I get a stack up on the table of about 10. They nest inside of each other. I put about 4 right in front of me, and I actually just crush them to make the divot that you need in the top of the flat so the seed can rest in there and not get washed away. I take the top one off because obviously it didn't get a divot. There's certain seeds that are much easier than other seeds. Brassica seeds are super easy to do with the vacuum seeder because you basically roll them around on the vacuum seeder plate and they all just fall into those little cups I was describing. And then you shake off the excess, flip it over, and then you release the vacuum, and all those little seeds just fall right into their spot. So we knew we would make it pay, and it totally pays on our scale for sure. Even if we had 50 members, we would have one. It cost $600, that's about what we paid for it, but it just saves so much time. I mean, I know farms where all the employees do in the spring is seed, and we just don't do that. So it's like, to me, it's a no-brainer. Our seeding greenhouse is heated. We use a propane heater. It's a hoop house with double plastic inflated walls. And for our operation, the bulk of the seeding is in the beginning of the season. So when you first start, you don't have many seedlings and it's really cold. At least that's how it goes with us when we first start. So what we do is we take a sheet of greenhouse plastic and hang it like a curtain off one of the bows of the greenhouse, and so we're just heating the small area. And then we just keep moving that back. The more and more seedlings we've got, we make it bigger and bigger. And it kind of works because the bigger it gets, it's also the later in the season, so the warmer it is. And propane to us just seems like one of those expenses that's just necessary. So why worry about it? When we first started, we were always trying to save money here and there, and we were all obsessed about how much money we were spending on propane. But now it's just like, well, you just have to spend the money on propane so you have plants. So we try to keep the air temperature in the seeding greenhouse in the beginning of the season around, at night, 50, during the day, whatever the sun gives it, above 50, but baseline 50, and that's not really enough to germinate tomatoes and celeriac, celery, peppers, eggplant. So we put them on electric heat tape mats. I think they're called agri-mats, agri-tape. And underneath the heat mats, we put sheets of 2-inch insulation board. Previous to this farm, we had always just covered our freshly seeded flats with more potting soil, but we worked at a farm where they used vermiculite, which is just I think it's puffed mica. It hinders dampening off and mold growth. Mold and dampening off don't really thrive in the vermiculite topped flat, so we top dress all of our flats with vermiculite after they're seeded. We have both worked, luckily, for people who were obsessed about watering. How to water perfectly. And so it's kind of good because I'm not really that obsessive of a person in those sorts of areas. So it was nice for me to have teachers who were completely obsessed so that some of it rubbed off on me. And goes back to like those transplants are just so valuable to your farm. If you have unhealthy transplants, they might recover some in the field, but if there's stress in the field, it's just they're kind of the basis of a good season. You just have to have really healthy transplants. So watering is very important. We water every morning, and we water very precisely. We actually were taught, and we still count. So we do a pass for each cell, and I think in a 128 there's 8 lines. So we'd go across 8 times. Really steady, even speed, and then also really even height above the flats. And you also have to make sure that you completely pass over the edge of a flat. And then we were taught to lift the flats and don't do it by look because it can look really wet on top and they're just not. So the way we tell if flats are watered enough is you pick them up and you get to know what a nicely watered flat feels like for the size of that flat and the size of the plants in the flat. Outside of our seeding greenhouse, we have a little mini hoop house built on the ground. There's landscape fabric and then little mini hoops with greenhouse plastic that you can pull over. And I think it's about 60 feet long. We leave the plastic off during the day so that it exposes the elements, wind, rain, and then at night we close it. The primary role of that is as a hardening off area. So the idea of hardening off is that, have these tender little plants that are in a perfect gentle environment in the seeding greenhouse, and then you're gonna have to put them in the field where it's not perfect and gentle at all. So we put them in this hardening off tunnel, preferably, a week or so before we're ready to plant them. 3 days at least, overnight at the worst.